Okay, so the Walt for today's lesson is describing a scene in detail. Now, this is very similar to describing a character like we've been doing over the last couple of days. In fact, we're going to use the same techniques, but this time I'm going to ask you to piece it together bit by bit. I think that will be easier. And then for those of you who like to really show off and just go mad and write a huge number of pages, I'll give you that opportunity to do that as well. If you would rather do this on a computer or on a tablet or whatever, if you'd rather type it up, it might be easier actually for this lesson to do it on a computer or a mobile or whatever. So I'll attach a Google Doc with a picture on it which you can use. You're more than welcome to use your book as well. In fact, if you don't have any other options but you have to use your book, that's absolutely fine as well. I know some people prefer writing than using the computer. That's absolutely fine. So we're going to describe a street. I'm going to give you a picture of two streets. The first street I'm going to describe. The second street you're going to describe. They're quite similar, but different enough so that, importantly, your description is going to be very different to mine, and hopefully it's going to show your personality and show off what you can do. I was working with some people yesterday on describing the characters, and I think a lot of people were stuck at the beginning. They didn't really know what to do at the beginning. But then once they broke it down, once they thought, okay, well actually, let's break it down. What does this person look like? Here's some details about what they look like. And then I'm going to start adding around that the fancy language, the metaphors, the longer, fancier descriptions. And then once you did that, people were describing memories and personality traits of this person. And then again, writing fancy metaphors and creative language around that. And then at the end, once you had all the ideas in different places, once you stuck them together into one paragraph, I think people are actually surprising themselves of how good their writing could be. So let's try it again. Let's keep going because this is really impressive stuff that I'm seeing so far this week. Okay, I'll share with you this slide so you'll have it, but I'll just talk you through it. This is the street that I'm going to describe. If you're interested, it could be anywhere, this street. That's not important. If you're interested, it's in Mexico. And this is the street that I want you to describe. So they're kind of similar, but there's a few key details. Some people in this street. Again, this street can be anywhere you want it to be. It's actually a photograph of a street in Italy. You can see at the end there. It's a really nice picture. I like it. But you can put it wherever you like. If you like a challenge, you can make up your own street if you like. You can ignore the picture and just come up with your own street. That's absolutely fine too. Okay, so unlike yesterday, we're going to write this in different chunks. So the first thing we're going to do is, all I want you to do is to very basically write down what you can see in the street. You don't need any details, you don't need any fancy language, just tell me what you can see. So all I've written here is the street, there we go, I'll leave it on there. The street had, oh, pardon me, I forgot to say, it's important that we're writing this in past tense because we're doing it as part of the creative writing for stories. So it's important that you're writing in the past tense. And I've written, the street had buildings on each side and plants on the pavement. There was a white car in the middle of the road and a tree at the end. There's no fancy language there. I'm just literally telling you what there is. The street had buildings on each side, plants on the pavement, buildings, plants. There was a white car in the middle of the road and a street at the end. That's it. So that's what you want to do first, okay? So can you describe very basically what you can see in that picture? Don't go into any details or anything fancy. Just name me 4 things. So you could say the street had cobblestones going down it. There was no cars, but there were some people in the middle. There was what looked like a well. Was it a sundial maybe? There was a well or a sundial in the middle, and clothes were hanging from washing lines. You don't need to write anything else. Okay, once you've done that, if you're doing it on a computer, you can just add to your work. I want you to add more details of what you've already told me and use some adjectives to do that. So this is exactly the same bit of writing. I've just added a tiny bit more detail and a couple of adjectives, some extended noun phrases. The quiet street had small, colourful buildings on each side and pretty green plants on the pavement. There was a newish good word there, a newish looking white car in the middle of the road and a large maple tree at the end. So what I've done is I've added a little bit more detail. Okay, your turn. If you rather watch this whole video through and then go back and do your work bit by bit, that's fine. If you'd rather pause the video each time and write your work, that's fine. So if you're doing the pausing, pause the video now and then add to what you've already written. Okay. So you could say the old buildings on each side, the crumbling buildings on each side, the grey road going through, whatever it is, add a little bit more detail. Okay. So the next thing you're going to do to your work is to add some figurative language, like metaphors, similes, or personification. I'll read you what I've written. I've not deleted anything. All I've done is added a couple of metaphors and stuff like that. And this is what I've done to mine. The quiet street had small, colourful buildings like the colours of a rainbow on each side, and pretty green plants on the pavement that were guards against the traffic. There was a newish-looking white car that slept motionless in the middle of the road, and there was a large maple tree at the end that looked like the entrance to another world. So some nice figurative language going on there. Okay, your turn. Pause the video. Look at your writing so far and add some figurative language for me. Okay. Next. Now imagine you or the person describing the street knows the street well. So it's a street that they're very familiar with. At the beginning, that means write it before what you've already written. Write briefly some non-visual details about it. What some of the buildings were, what they were used for, who lived there and stuff like that. So don't go into any details, just brief non-visual, so describing the street but not telling me what it looks like. So all I've done is I've written at the top here, apart from a few small shops, most of the buildings were houses. It was a popular place to live and being so close to the city, yet quiet and peaceful most of the time. That's it. That's all I've done. So I'm describing what the street was used for. Okay. So I've just said most of those houses, apart from a couple of shops, most of those buildings are houses. It's a popular place to live, being so close to the city, yet quiet and peaceful most of the time. That's all I've done. Okay. Pause the video. Now you have a go. Tell me some more stuff about this street that isn't about what it looks like. Who lives there? What's it like to live there? What does it smell like, maybe? What's it used for? Is it popular with tourists? Stuff like that. I wonder what that is. It's like a UFO or something. Ooh. It's not my computer. Anyway, pause the video. Okay. Finally, the last thing I want you to do is, again at the very beginning, I want you to add some memories that either you, if you're writing it in first person, or the person describing the street, if you're writing it in third person, has had about the street. I don't think I should have written had there. I'll change that. It should be the person describing the street has about the street. There we go. I'll change that. So all I've done is I've used old Alba again as my example. And I've just added a very, very short memory of her and the street. Alba had been here many times as a child and played football in the street with an old friend she had gone to school with. That's it. That's all I've done. Apart from a few small shops, most of the buildings were houses. It was a popular place to live, being so close to the city, yet quiet and peaceful most of the time. The quiet street had small, colourful buildings like the colours of a rainbow on each side and pretty green plants on the pavement that were guards against the traffic. There was a newish-looking white car that slept motionless in the middle of the road, and there was a large maple tree at the end like an entrance to another world. Okay, so I've just added another layer. Your turn. If you're writing it in first person, say I remember. If you're writing it in third person, you say he, she, it, or the person's name, or they, and the person's name. So a very brief memory about the street. So he remembered he'd come here with his dad once to buy a paper aeroplane making kit. It was so cheap and the paper aeroplane failed on the first flight. Just something very, very short like that. Okay, pause the video, and once you're done. Okay, if that took you a while, if you've written for 45 minutes now, and you've got a piece of work that you're really proud of, go over it. Take the time now to go over it to make sure there's no typos, to make sure there's no spelling mistakes, to make sure it all makes sense. Or if you wanted to tweak it a little bit, change the sentences a little bit, add something, take it away, now's the time to do it. However, if you fancied an extension, the extension is, how much further can you go with these descriptions? As we've discovered, and as I discovered, certainly when I was reading my book the other day, descriptions can go on forever. You'll probably be aware of a series of books and a series of films based on the books called The Lord of the Rings. I read them when I was in sixth form. Huge, huge books. And it was written by a man called J.R. Tolkien. Now, he used to just go into so much detail. There's a famous place in The Lord of the Rings called Mordor. It's like the really dark, scary place. And when he first talks about Mordor, I remember reading the description, and it just went on for pages upon pages upon pages upon pages. I mean, I think it must have been about 20 pages of just description about this place. Now, obviously, I don't expect you to do that, but if you fancied showing off for me, then why not go into extreme detail about your street? Or if you wanted to start again and make up your own street, then that's fine too. I had a go at just going a bit further with mine. This is just an example, and it is an extension, remember, so please don't worry if you've already done loads and loads of writing today and you feel like you've done the best you can. This is just an extension if you fancy doing it. Okay, so this is what I've written. Alba had been here many times as a child and played football in the streets with an old friend she had gone to school with. The old buildings looked almost exactly the same, if not a little cleaner. Apart from a few small shops, most of the buildings were houses. People who lived there would hang out the windows at night to enjoy the warm summer air, and you could often hear the beautiful singing of a young lady who, so as I'd been told, grew up to be quite famous. The smell of the various meals being cooked every Sunday lunchtime would waft through the streets when Alba had been playing. Roast chicken, steamed broccoli, and sometimes sweet apples would fill the air with their aromas. It was a popular place to live, being so close to the city, yet quiet and peaceful most of the time. The quiet streets had small, colourful buildings like the colours of a rainbow on each side, and pretty green plants on the pavements that were guards against the traffic. There was a newish-looking white car that slept motionless in the middle of the road, and there was a large maple tree at the end, like the entrance to another world. Okay, can you go further than that? There's a couple of typos here that I will go back and change now. Otherwise, I will look forward to reading these. I am not online today because I'm at school, so we will check back in tomorrow to see how you got on. Okay. Please do post questions, by the way. You can ask questions in the comment sections, or if you've got any ideas, I'd love to hear them, so share away.